So good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you're joining us from. My name is John Nahas. I'm the Vice President of Business Development at Avalanches, supporting the Avalanche blockchain and the growth of the ecosystem. I'd like to welcome you all to our third Powering Business with Blockchain series today with Harold from Mastercard and Pavel from Wirex. As a recap, these talks are with industry leaders and pioneers and partners of Avalanche as to how we can build better as an industry, but also utilizing Avalanche as blockchain. Previous Powering Business with Blockchain conversations have been with partners such as Circle, as well as Deloitte, and we're really pleased and proud to have both Pavel and Harold with us today. So I'll turn it over to Harold first to introduce himself and give a little bit of background.
Thank you very much, John. Well, let me just say a few words about myself. My name is Harold Bosse. I work for Mastercard. I head new product development and innovation in the new payments platform division. Obviously, we are very focused and interested in blockchain and digital assets in general. Various specifics that we're looking at, and we need to talk about some of that around cross-border payments in particular, or movement of digital asset across borders. I'm going to add one thing. I will speak as myself today rather than as a Mastercard employee. That gives me a little bit more freedom to say things, and I welcome your questions at the end of this session.
Perfect. Thank you, Harold. Pavel, please introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Pavel Matveev. I'm co-CEO of Wirex. For people who are not familiar with Wirex, probably the easiest way to describe Wirex is a challenger bank with fully featured cryptocurrency wallets where you can send, receive, store, exchange digital assets. You can earn interest on digital assets. We have 5 million customers, and we've been on the market for 6-7 years, so like veterans in crypto space.
Thank you, Harold. Thanks, Pavel. I'd like to highlight that both Wirex and Avalanches were Mastercard StarPath participants, so programs to work with other companies in the space and get some guidance and leadership from Mastercard on best practices and ways to really grow business and expand into new areas. With that in mind, Harold, I'd like to kick this off with a question to you first. I'd like to get your opinion on whether traditional financial institutions are really ready to use digital assets, both for cross-border payments and remittances.
Well, it's a very general question. So I think the usual answer you'll get is it depends, but it depends on things that are quite important, and they are moving. It depends, obviously, and we're going to move that out of the way really quickly. It depends on the maturity and the appetite of the traditional financial institutions themselves, right? But more importantly, I think it also depends on the maturity of the space out there, of the industry, right? Both on the technological side, but also on the acceptance within the industry. And if we're looking at a couple of dimensions that are relevant for the use of digital asset for cross-border, we've got to look at customer experience, right? So it's been possible to send digital assets across border for a while right now in a non-regulated space. Financial institution, existing financial institution, and new financial institution will want to bring that into the regulated space. That's interesting. That's valuable, but not at the expense of destroying their existing customer experience, right? So that's the first thing. I think there is a level where we probably we're nearing that level where there is an understanding of how they can make things acceptable for their customers. There's a second dimension that is really important. It's about the use case. So moving digital asset across border is all good and fine, but why? And what are financial institutions? What do they want to support? Why do they want to support these activities? And I think there is something that is really important here. There's been a lot of hype around digital assets, a lot of the technology enables it, let's do it. I think the financial institutions are bringing a little bit of business centricity here and saying, well, there need to be a rational, there need to be a commercial rational, there need also to be a customer rational for moving these assets cross border. Last thing I'd like to bring is it's only going to happen, and I think it's going to happen a little bit sooner than later. even given the situation of the crypto assets right now. But it's going to happen rather sooner than later, just because it's about the expansion to new demographics. So we know that today, the individuals that are using, consuming, sending digital assets around the world, there are specific types of demographics, right? They are early adopters and new adopters. They are becoming more and more democratized, but we haven't yet made the switch towards mass market. That is going to be a very important aspect of the decision by financial institutions to move into the space. It is related to the business, but it's also very much related to the perception, right? If there are some demographics that are currently not very much interested in the digital asset themselves, if these demographics start to see the point, the reason why it is interesting to leverage digital assets for cross-border activities, and that might pivot the perspective of the bank. And I'm not talking about people being passionate about digital asset. I'm talking about people wanting to do something, and this digital asset is the right answer for that. So think about, you want to buy a house in your home country, you want to send money to your family, you want to purchase something on a foreign commercial platform. If it makes sense, and if it's faster, and if it's easier, you want to use digital asset. You don't want to do it because it's digital asset. I think that's really where the financial institution will start pivoting when that happens.
I think you hit a very important point, Harold. People in the Web3 space love to talk about the innovation, but that's because we're users, right? So we prefer, or there is a preference for using digital assets because we are digitally native. But for the mass market, for everybody else, it needs to be, to your point, it needs to be faster, cheaper, and easier than what currently exists, or at least as fast, cheap, and easy, right? And we're not there yet. So, in your opinion, do you see the traditional financial sector looking at this as a means of, or do you see the challenges facing corporations in this space as do we acquire new technology or do we build it ourselves? And where is that kind of dichotomy?
No, absolutely. So I think that ship has sailed for most of the industry, right? Nobody's building any blockchain technology anymore. That's not the point, right? There are some fantastic technology out there, Avalanche being one of them. There's absolutely no need to go and try to reinvent the wheel. It's just throwing good money after bad, and it's not going to land in a very good place, right? For the blockchain space. I think there are challenges facing corporations right now. I mean, I'm talking about corporations because this is another mass market that's just around the corner waiting to be leveraged, right? But I think we need to understand what are the different rationales for leveraging blockchain, and blockchain plus digital assets, right? So not always together, but one and the other. And I think there is the challenges are really, if you look at, there are probably four of them that are most important. The first one is lack of senior management understanding. You get senior managers in corporates, and they've got a day job, right? And their day job is not about understanding blockchain. That's not what they do, right? They've got a business to run. They've got people to keep employed. They've got margin to make. So lack of senior management understanding, and that's going to be helped, and it's already being helped a lot by advisors, consultants coming in. The questions arise, and that's one of the ways to solve for it. There is also you mentioned it. Can you do it better, quicker, faster? So there is a challenge about cost, speed, and scalability. Right? Why would you spend time on these technologies when actually the historical technologies work fine, don't they? Right? But they do, because that's where the business is right now. Why would you move to something different that, given that all what we hear seems to be quite risky? Actually, we know that the blockchain itself is not risky. The technology is not the risk, right? Speculation and all that, that's the risk. But if you're at the head of a corporation, if you're not familiar with those topics, you might commingle a little bit, and that's complex. The last point that I think is critical for corporates, but also for others, is the regulatory framework. And nobody's going to start using digital assets on blockchain unless they're absolutely certain that this money is good money, and they are not going to be beaten back by, you know, claim, lawsuits, regulators coming down their neck. You should be regulated. We've seen that before, right? But you should be regulated. You've done something that is, you shouldn't have done that. And a corporate that's active in good faith, doing something and has no intention to become regulated, deals with digital assets and does something wrong and suddenly becomes regulated, it's a nightmare, right? So, or can incur fines and stuff. So I think there's a regulatory concern. There is the lack of an understanding for senior leadership, which is being tackled, and more questions are coming, more and more education is happening. And then the commercial rationale, scalability, cost, speed, those are coming in the game as well.
So I think you touch on, of course, a lot of important topics here, and I think you highlight all the challenges that incumbents and existing corporations have. And as we know, and as you mentioned, they're not building. So, you know, they're either acquiring or they're partnering with innovators in this space. So I want to turn this over to Pavel, and Pavel would love for you to speak to our audience today about, you know, where Wirex has differentiated itself, where the value is in utilizing Wirex, and how Wirex has kind of brought these solutions to the fore initially.
Yeah, well, as I mentioned, we've been in the space for quite some time, and I think our focus was always, you know, this bridge, this gap between crypto and traditional banking rails. So that's why it's, you know, we were always focusing on, you know, spending digital assets with a card, for example, or exchange digital assets to fiat currency instantly, seamlessly, and so on and so forth. We started focusing a lot on Avalanche ecosystem, I think since December. And there is certain things which is kind of visible to public, like when we started supporting AVAX, for example, and there is certain things which are not visible. So I'll explain this in a second. So there are things which are already in place. There are things which we will launch very, very soon. It's kind of short term. And there is more visionary things which we're planning to do a bit later. And it's just visionary stuff takes more time. So I'll give you a couple of examples. So Wirex has a product, it's called X Accounts. So X Accounts, it's a product designed for mass market where you can put your funds. It can be fiat currency, it can be cryptocurrency, it can convert it to stable coins, and you generate interest on that. And historically, this product was live for maybe like 2 years. And historically, we were using institutional lenders to generate the return on these funds. But we started recently switching this to DeFi. So right now, for example, we're allocating portion of our funds on Banky, Aave version 3, and Nereus Finance. So all these kind of DeFi lending protocols on Avalanche. And so far, it's been great. It's better user experience with institutional lenders. The return is much higher, much more flexibility, and so on and so forth. So we planning to actually, you know, allocate more funds towards this. So this is one example, which already in place, and people use it. People don't really know about this because it's happening on the back end, but we basically provide a value to end users. Another things which we are planning to launch very, very soon, this week actually, we're planning to add 4 stablecoins on Avalanche C chain. So it will be USDT, USDC, DAI, and XUSD. So with all 4 stablecoins, I think having them in our application, supporting on C chain, opens a lot of interesting use cases. Especially when sending money. Somebody can, again, send money from Brazil to Portugal and use Wirex Mastercard to spend these funds as a kind of last mile solution, because people still need to buy things and, you know, spend their assets. So I think this opens a lot of interesting use cases, and I do believe, you know, smart people, developers will come up with interesting, you know, solutions leveraging this infrastructure. On top of it, we are also planning to add additional functionality to our card, where people will be, so let me explain this thing. So people don't spend crypto with a card. So people spend gains and people spend fiat or stable coins. This is a valid use case, but people don't spend AVAX. People don't spend Bitcoin. It's not a use case. Right now, it's possible to spend whatever asset we have with a Mastercard, with a Wirex Mastercard. But what we're planning to add, the thing for cryptocurrency is that we will take it as a collateral. So the entire exercise will be seamless and powered by Avalanche DeFi ecosystem. If you spend in AVAX, for example, we will take it as a collateral and we'll settle with stable coins and fiat currency. So this is so it's kind of a credit card. So our card will be a credit card without actually being credit card. So it's still kind of a debit product. So this is what we're planning to launch very soon. And more kind of visionary stuff, I think it's related to subnets. I think subnets, it's a great innovation of Avalanche. And I personally think there are so many use cases. So right now we're working on two use cases. So one is settlement network, which is, it takes time, and we're trying to engage with partners. We already have 2 tier 1 merchants who already participate, and when talking to schemes, so we can get it off the ground. This is the hardest part in this. So getting right participants and getting compliance right, it's the hardest. And then technical stuff, it's probably the easiest one. And another one project it's a bit later in development cycle is we're planning to put part of our infrastructure and banking rails and infrastructure we have on a blockchain in a subnet, where we will be using XXT as a gas fee, but the idea is that Web2 companies usually were focusing on API, right? So if you want your product being integrated, well, you create an API and companies will integrate this. When we're talking about Web3, our strategy is to put it on a blockchain and create it in modular DeFi primitives, so other DeFi applications can interact with this. So that's kind of our master plan. Obviously, these two last things about subnets are a bit more visionary, and it takes longer to get it off the ground, but yeah, that's the plan.
Pavel, you mentioned so many things that caught my attention. So, and I have other questions, but I want to touch on one thing that you mentioned, and I think it's really important. And Harold's spoken of this previously as well. You said that the tech part is easy, but the compliance is hard. So I think a takeaway for everybody is that the technology has arrived. For the most part, the technology exists. The builders know how to build, and the developers know how to create elegant solutions that work. To Harold's point, it's the regulatory uncertainty that's still holding people back. It's the compliance, it's the back office, it's the paper pushing. So we are trying to push forward a digital world, a faster world, an easier world, but we're still being bogged down with the procedures and the policies of the BAS that for their part have not been automated, that have not been streamlined like we have with the technology to power these rails going forward. Pavel, Wirex recently arrived in the US in January. So to this point, what were some of the obstacles that you saw in launching in the United States, and how did your team navigate that?
Well, first of all, it's a regulatory and licensing thing. So because Wirex operates in dual environments, so there is a traditional part of it and there is a crypto part of it. So we ended up partnering with 2 companies. So one is a bank, and we're using banking federal license to cover traditional part of our business, like a card issuance and the ACH accounts and this sort of things. And we partnered with another company, it's Zero Hash, for licensing coverage for kind of the crypto activities. So, and obviously you have dual environment, so you need to partner with 2 companies when you have 2 integrations, so it's another level of complexity. So for us, it was probably the main challenge, and we've been working on this for 2 years. And back in the days, we had a choice, and the choice was to go and launch without anything, like offshore exchanges, and it's still a lot of companies still use this route. And another option was just to spend time and get everything right. And we decided to spend time and get everything right.
Amazing. So, pivoting back to the amazing things you're doing. I mean, you talked about subnets, you talked about Avalanche DeFi ecosystem, you talked about, the stable coins that you're going to be integrating. What stood out to you the most about integrating Avalanche? What were the benefits? Of course, I mean, everybody knows about the speed and the cost benefits, but in general, just working on the Avalanche platform, how has that improved your business?
Well, again, in our case, all the benefits we're offering to customers, like, high yield on our X accounts, it's powered by DeFi ecosystem on Avalanche. But I think when I think about Avalanche, Avalanche has very interesting and big and diverse community of developers and community of users. And I think, your DeFi team is doing a great job with bringing more and more projects and, more projects from gaming industry as well. I think I'm quite excited about this part of blockchain ecosystem. But I think the community, number of projects, obviously, if you compare Avalanche with other networks, the gas fees, much cheaper. Also, if you think about stability, right? So some other blockchains are struggling with that. So when we're talking about production use for enterprise-grade system, stability is important. It is very important, especially in our case. We have 5 million customers. Well, if blockchain is not working for 3 hours, it will be a disaster for us.
Said better than I could. So thank you, Pavel. Harold, Pavel just said something that you and I discussed at the Avalanche Summit in Barcelona. And I think I want to touch upon this. The Avalanche community is diverse. Harold, you mentioned this to me at the conference in Barcelona, that it looked like a diverse crowd, a much more diverse crowd than a traditional finance or a more crypto-centric. How important is it for us to go outside of our comfort zone, right? To stop talking to the same people in the same circles that we're always dealing with? How do we break out of that? How do we break out of the crypto native, digital native kind of bubble that we're still existing in, right? We build products and tools and DeFi and things for people that are already in the system. How do we break out of that and really reach the next 10 million, 100 million users?
Yeah, and I think you're asking the right question, right? It's about breaking out, right? We've proven to the world as digital native that this is what's possible from a technology perspective, even from a product perspective. It's proven, right? It works, and there are some very good technology that are very robust, very speedy, like Avalanche, right? Where cost is under control and it's not spiraling, and that's important. How do we now break out of this comfort zone? And as I mentioned, it is back in Barcelona. We talked about it. We said it's not about grabbing the next 100 billion out of where it is right now. That's not the point. Then you're going into red waters. Everybody's going to, there's going to be blood on the walls everywhere. Where some will win, some will lose, but everybody's going to be very fierce situation ahead. The truth is, I think we have to look at the 100 billion that are not existing today. It's business that is created ex nihilo because the technology enables it, right? So think about it, making a parallel. Think about the advent of the internet. Before the internet, nobody was thinking that Amazon could be a concept, right? Even a concept. You need internet to start understanding how Amazon could work, and then from Amazon you can make money, right? And you can have a real impact on the world. Well, in this particular case, we're in the same situation. How do we break out? We transform the lives of people. We go into demographics or groups of people that don't really think about blockchain first or don't think about digital asset first, but they think about their business problems. And how do we get them to think about, right, you've got a business problem, and actually we've got something in digital that can solve in an innovative way your problem. It's going to create not only just a solution for your current problem, you're going to do it faster, quicker, better. No, it's enabling you to charge for different services, to enable you to monetize your activity differently. above and beyond what is happening today. So I think you're talking about breaking out. I think it's critical. It's breakout. It's about us. It's about the community. It's about the Avalanche community is diverse. It's one of the most diverse community I've been interacting with. It means that you already have, interactions with communities that are different, right? That are new. That the gaming one is one that most people share, but you're going into direction that not other technologies are going into, and I think that's super interesting. But it's also about reminding ourselves that everybody who's on the call today, but probably in the community at large, is responsible for going out, advocating, saying, "All right, you know what? I'm talking to my to a business partner tomorrow, and this business partner is in, you name it, whatever it is, you're in the situation, but talk to them about how you solve problems and how you create new opportunities for your business above and beyond what you're doing today, because it's about advocating. It's about going out and talking to verticals, to new verticals, and there's a lot of different verticals out there as soon as you start looking, right? And some of them have never heard about how this technology can help them, never even thought about it. So I think it's really about breaking out, and it's about making the effort to go into an uncomfortable zone, all of us as a community, identifying opportunities. And there's a lot of money by being the first one to go. Once you've got a robust technology like Avalanche today, robust technology, good people to help you develop. You talked about the product people, the technology people, the developers. They can do things. You need to find the opportunities, the business opportunities, and that is in the spaces that have not been touched yet. There's a huge amount of them.
Harold, you hit the nail on the head there. Something that I talk about often, and when people ask what the mission of Avalanche's business development team is, my first answer is always education, right? People in this space, like I was saying, we build products for each other, but our job first and foremost is to educate. It's to educate, like you said, partners. It's to educate new partners, potential partners, but it's also to educate everybody, right? It's, I think, incumbent on everybody in this space to educate about the benefits, about where we see a better world coming about through this technology. That includes our parents and our siblings and our spouses and just people, because there's a lot of misinformation or there's a lot of ignorance out there about what this technology is, because of course, with everything, they always hear bad news instead of the core things. Pavel, you mentioned so many things that Wirex is doing that's fantastic, that's utilizing Avalanche. And that's expanded to the US, but across the world. What I want to ask you kind of what the focus is for Wirex on education, right? As users come onto the platform and use Wirex, how is Wirex kind of initiating them or teaching them about the technology that they're using or the better solutions that exist?
It's a good question, and just wanted to briefly comment with the mass marketing and where we are right now. So in Wirex, we see the opportunity right now on the market is that most of the mass market is not served. I think when we're talking about DeFi space and crypto native users, it's relatively small audience. If you take the most popular DeFi application, I don't know, whatever it is on Avalanche right now, and see how many wallets interacting. We're talking about thousands, we're not talking about millions. So this is a tiny number compared to a mass market. So the opportunity we see right now is, okay, how do we want this? This is a small crypto native audience, and all blockchains, all DeFi, everyone compete for this audience. This is just nightmare. Like, what if we just focus on the mass market and trying to serve them better? There is a couple of obstacles. Obviously, the user interface have to be, better. So that's why in our product strategy, we're focusing on creating, let's say, Wirex wallet, which is a kind of, non-custodial wallet without seed phrases. There is private key, but it basically oversimplified for mass market. So this is a part of our strategy. So we focus actually on mass market because we believe there is a much bigger opportunity there rather than compete with existing players for crypto native guys. And answer your question about education. So we have one extremely popular feature in our system. It's called CryptoBack. So CryptoBack is our trademark, but it's basically cashback in cryptocurrency. And it's quite interesting that we have a lot of users who've never tried cryptocurrency, but they use us as a banking replacement or as a spare card or whatever. And when they use our card, they get in cryptocurrency. You might be surprised, but there are still a lot of people who are worried and afraid of cryptocurrency. And they kind of, I've never buy Bitcoin or I've never buy cryptocurrency. So for them, this crypto-back is a way to get cryptocurrency without buying cryptocurrency. So it's a kind of a first step. So this works better than any education, whatever articles you can put. This is basically free money they get from using the product, and this is the best education in our case.
Yeah, I love that. Right. I think you signal that instead of people risking their own capital, if they earn it as a reward and they start to see it in their wallet, and then they start to learn about it, they kind of go down the rabbit hole and go from there. I want to shift gears. Avalanche has a big focus now, of course, on subnets. Whether it's for enterprise use cases, whether it's for institutional use cases, GameFi, DeFi, payments. For those that are joining today and that are unfamiliar, Avalanche has the ability to create permissioned or private chains or permissionless and public chains called subnets that run off the primary network and have interoperability. The easiest way to look to think of subnets are app-specific chains. So we see a ton of potential there, of course, with gaming, with payments, with everything, but more so on the permission side as being a regulated environment. I know there's a question that I have here from the group. How is Avalanche taking into account KYC, AML, or for companies too? So if you launch a subnet that's a permission subnet, at the chain level, it can be gated by KYC and AML checks, so that any participant entering that chain has to have been KYC'd or done an AML check before that, which I believe opens up a lot of opportunities. Harold, from your seat and from where you see this industry kind of on the permissionless side, on the single monolithic chains that are trying to tackle everything, how do subnets really deliver a differentiating factor for everybody?
I think you explained it very well. I think it's transformative. This is the innovation that we were waiting for. Things we could not do in public blockchain, we can now do. We call it the walled garden behind which we can operate regulated applications. KYC is an important one. It actually, the door is open to identity, and how do we manage identity without disclosing or making sure that it is done in a way that is compatible with data regulation and other types of regulatory obligations. I think the subnet is really instrumental because you call it the app-specific chain. We look at it as business-specific chain. So depending on business, what type of business you want to do, you may want to interact between different subnets, and we think of them being next to each other so that they can hop from one to the other more easily interact between them, but allow participants. In our case, I can see business logics where you could have partners. You could have a vendor and a seller and a buyer somewhere. They collaborate together and they create, depending on what they have to do, depending on their activities. Some of them might be regulated, some of them might not be, different subnets. And that's really where the complexity of the technology has to disappear. It has to disappear behind the business intent, right? It should not be visible by the actors, even the business actors at the end. In the end game, we should be able to have these subnets being operated just like the internet is operated today, and you don't need to go and think about should I go in? The technology people will deal with that, and they already deal with that very well, right? It should be now going in the background. These are fantastic assets and capabilities, and now it enables business, and that's really what matters to go to mass market.
Pavel, you guys are, at Wirex, are taking a look at subnets. You're working with subnets. How has this changed the way that you conduct business or anticipate conducting business, right? How is Wirex in a real world scenario looking at utilizing subnets to scale out your offering?
So we've been looking into, having business. So first of all, I think Harold just, mentioned a lot of things I was about to say. So make my answer shorter, but we were looking at blockchain specific for business use case for a long time, and I think we were considering creating our own blockchain or forks some of the blockchains, because it's still valid way to create this kind of private chain. But I think what Avalanche and Subnet gives, and then something unique, is that this subnets that can coexist, and C-chain can be a hub. So where different subchains can interact and can exchange information or whatever they want to exchange. I think this is very powerful. So we might have two side chains focusing on different business cases, and they will be not connected, but C-chain can be used as a hub in order to facilitate a broader use case. I think this is quite cool. And another quite cool thing about subchains that they're very customizable. So, whatever token you'd like to use for gas, you can do it, and other parameters as well, which is quite cool. Saves a lot of time for us.
Yeah, I love to hear that, right? That subnets give use cases to businesses, and that they save time, right? That's the goal. I think what we've seen in the past with enterprise level chains, are that they're single chains with a single solution trying to solve a lot of problems, and they exist in a vacuum. To your point, subnets had the ability of interoperability with the rest of the chain and can use the C chain as a hub and pull stable coins and other assets to benefit them. I do want to turn to a bunch of questions that the audience has been sending out. I'm going to try to kind of weave them together because a lot of them have an overlap. But I think the first question that's popped up the most on my side is, Pavel, you mentioned that, of course, you're utilizing DeFi protocols. So how is that DeFi world living with the CeFi world that also exists on your platform? And kind of, let's, at a practical level, how are you kind of balancing those two?
It's a good question. I think for any enterprise who interacting with DeFi, I think the first thing everyone cares about, like security and safety, like how can you access DeFi applications, securely. I think we are, and at this state of blockchain lifecycle, we do have a lot of platforms who can provide this secure and safety access. Probably it's not a secret, we're using Fireblocks for that, and the MPC tech. And it's fully automated. It covers different life cycles and business cases for us. So yeah, I think the CeFi and DeFi world coexist. We use DeFi for specific products, so it's lending products on a borrowing side, and we're planning to launch this new feature for kind of a credit card feature, which will be leveraging the same kind of DeFi ecosystem, and it will be fully automated. And again, we've been working on this for a long time. So I think this, the border between CeFi and crypto and DeFi already quite blurred for us. So yeah, I think so far it's all automated, works perfectly fine together. And yeah, I think we will be focusing more and more on integrating or submerging or merging Wirex and DeFi ecosystem.
That's an amazing example of real world use cases where we're merging DeFi and CeFi. So if anyone needs to look any further, they look to Wirex as an example of how to do so. Harold, from your perch, how do you see, Wirex is doing an amazing job with this. How do you see the rest of the kind of the industry and other players kind of starting to delve into DeFi, or do you see a potential merge happening, or where do you see it going in the next 1 to 2 years?
So I think, what we call DeFi and its evolution, the CeFi is talking about embedded finance, right? And we can see a convergence of those two. So you embed the finance into your product, whatever the product is, right? So it can be from hairdressing to Amazon, but you embed your finance into your product, and that obviously becomes a Web3 game, right? Where there is no way we can do that by going into historical paper-based money, for example. If you want to embed your finance into your product, you've got to embrace digital assets and blockchain. And what that means is that suddenly the portfolio of DeFi products become just an add-on. Something that is accessible to products that were not originally looking at evolving into the Web3 or the crypto space, right? So if you go from a traditional business, you're starting to embed finance into your product, and then suddenly it opens the door to Web3 and the DeFi. And I think that's where we are going to see a large convergence and mass adoption. As soon as some historical products are moving from the traditional Web2 into a Web3, leveraging Web3, we're going to see a lot more DeFi protocols being leveraged. It has to become invisible. I keep saying that, and I sound like a broken record, but it has to disappear in the background. And for a user, it doesn't care. I mean, honestly, my mom don't care if it's a CeFi or DeFi. But as a product owner, I do care. I do need to know I'm going to use that CeFi and I'm going to use that DeFi protocol in order to create my embedded finance into my product, which might have nothing to do with finance today.
That's a great way to put it. And with that, I think we've come to the conclusion of our chat today. Harold, thank you as always for your wisdom and for your insight as to where you see the market and where we can be going. Pavel, very great to meet you and speak today about all the exciting things that Wirex is doing, particularly in utilizing Avalanche's technology for a lot of product offerings. And I suggest to everybody to take a look at what you guys are doing and to utilize your services, of course. And looking forward to continuing this conversation at a later date and to continue working together and for the next powering business of blockchain, which will be sometime next month. So stay tuned, everybody. Thanks again, Pavel, and thank you, Harold. We appreciate it.
Thank you, John. Thanks, everyone.